Alright, this is Mayo from Chat with Data, and today we're going to be talking about how to create a chatbot for your website. So, if you've seen chatbots for documents, PDFs, you've probably wondered, how do I also create a chatbot for your website, or it could be a client's website or a company's website? And this is just a basic architecture. It's not going to go deep into crawling because that's a very advanced topic. But at a basic level, all we're doing effectively is we scrape relevant pages from your website. We convert that to raw text, so the scraped pages will become raw text. So raw text is obviously easier for us to work with. Then we split the raw text into chunks. We covered something similar in the previous video, so you can go watch that about effectively creating chatbots out of your Notion documents. So we split this into chunks, and we embed. Again, check previous videos, but embedding is converting text into numbers, so vector numbers, basically decimal points in thousands of dimensions. So it's the whole purpose is to help make it easier for computers to understand and work with words and be able to match them and find similar words. So these embedded text are then stored in the vector store. It's just a database or storage for these numbers that now represent the words from your website. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So when a user asks a question, let's say they ask a question, how do I become more productive? We don't just want to throw that forward to, skip this whole process, jump here, where we spoke about in the last video, where effectively this question will draw out relevant documents from the vector store. We'll combine that question with the relevant documents as context and send to the model. Here we want to actually take into account the chat history, because if you've noticed with ChatGPT, you can ask it a question and then have a chain of interactions, and it still remembers what you said previously. So we want to capture the chat history as we go along, as the user goes along to ask more questions. I hope that makes sense. I'll explain more in the code. So we get that question, we combine it with the chat history, then we ask GPT-3, can you please create a standalone question from the history and the question. We use that standalone question to extract documents, relevant documents from the vector store. Again, if you are not familiar from previous videos, this gets converted into an embedding, just like here. So now you have numbers matched against numbers. We find the most relevant number pairs. Then we can draw out the text from your website associated with those similar number pairs, right? So we get those relevant documents. We provide his context plus the standalone question in the prompt. So that's the instruction. We send it to LLM, which is GPT-3 or whatever you're using, and we get the answer. So the answer could be something like, one of the most effective ways to be productive is to create time blocks during the day for focus work. And then you can also give the bot the ability to provide references. So you can learn more in this guide at mywebsite.com/guide. And what's pretty cool about this is, unlike a situation where it's just a one-off conversation, you can now, the user can ask a question about this and effectively get a response back and create a chat bot activity with your website. So how are we going to do this? In this demo, we're going to be working with this website. So Thomas Frank is someone I've followed for a while. He's a productivity expert. Well, mostly focused now on Notion, and his tutorials are really good. But some of them are also really long. One of his most recent tutorials was 2 hours about using the API for Notion. So you can see all these guides here, and I just thought, you know what, it'll be pretty cool, since I'm both interested in what he has to say and also very interested in Notion, to create a chatbot based on his website, specifically his Notion guides. And I think I've been able to effectively create a chatbot out of almost 50,000 words, something crazy like that. I'm going to walk through that with you. But effectively, what's the first step? When you see a website, you have many options. You can crawl the website, go recursively through what's known as a breadth first algorithm to get the URLs of every page. That's a bit advanced. You can figure out what URLs you want to work with ahead of time. That's kind of what I've done, because the website has not too many URLs to work with, and so I just manually pulled out the ones I wanted to use. Yeah, this is the crash course I was saying. I think this is about 15,000 words. The video is 2.5 hours. So not to say that we shouldn't watch the video, but I think it'd be pretty cool to be able to ask questions about what's in this website. And so once you have an idea of how you want to work with the website, you just want to hit your developer tools. So that's Control-Shift-J on Windows. I'm not sure what it is on Mac. And you just want to have an idea of the structure of the website. So this is just basic CSS, HTML. But what you're basically looking for is consistency across pages. So what do I mean? So right there, if you see where I hovered, it's a H1 with an entry. So it's a H1 tag, and it has a class of entry title, and that is consistent with all the pages. And if you go further down, you can see the content is all within a div called entry content. And so right there already, I already have 2 reference points to work with when it comes time to crawling the website to extract the information. So you just want to analyze the key elements of the page you want to extract, and once you have that down, so okay, I've got the title, I've got the body of the text, and then you also want to make sure that it's not a JavaScript loaded page, because if it is, you can still use something like Puppeteer. This is for the JavaScript, TypeScript devs. But I just generally find it much easier to work with websites that most of the data is loaded straight away. It's more static by nature. So that way you can use something like Cheerio, which is a package I'm going to show you in a second. And what it does, it effectively passes through the HTML of your pass through HTML that you provide after you make a GET request to a page. So cool. So yeah, this is pretty straightforward, so it depends what else you want to extract. And then once you've kind of decided what you want to get out of the document, of the pages rather. So now it's time to, let's jump into code. So I'll just show you how it works. And this is a Supabase LangChain. So We're going to be using Supabase as a vector store. If you're not aware, Supabase is a very easy to use Postgres database. It's open source, and LangChain just recently created an integration with Supabase. So this is the first video on it, so hopefully you find it useful. So what you need to do here is run this script, scrape embed. So it's just an npm run scrape embed. Now before you do that, let me just run through. First of all, you need your Supabase URL, your Supabase anon key, and service role key. So let's jump into, should we jump into Supabase? Actually, let's just carry on for a second. I'm going to come back to that. Let me just give you an overview. Once you get those keys, you just want to run the script, scrape embed. The scrape embed is going to take you here. So what it does is you provide, in this case, I provided these guides, all these guides, they're thousands of words. You provide those guides into, you can change it to whatever you want to use. But the URLs effectively go in here, so extract data from URLs. You can see the function runs with the URLs, and then for each URL, it extracts data from the URL. So we have a custom web loader I made that uses Cherio. So as I said, Cherio passes, and Cherio, first we fetch, we make a get request to URL, get the HTML, and then we turn it to Cherio to load. So Cherio passes through. We extract the data that we're looking for. Again, it depends on you. We clean it up, and then we create a new document. So this is from LangChain, and this is the format that you want to get anything you're loading from into. So a document is effectively page content, which is a string, and metadata, which is effectively an object that consists of string and any pairs, right? So it can be any string, and string property and value can be anything. So that's how that works in a nutshell. And so once you run that script, you should see right here, so we save a JSON file, it's going to show up here, and then you should see the next section where we embed the document. We pass in the Supabase client, which was created in the utils folder. We pass in the docs, which is in the format of the document, as I said, and then new OpenAI embedding. So you can imagine what's going on under the hood is what I showed you in the diagram, right? Because basically now we have the raw docs, and so we're gonna go through this process of splitting into chunks and then embedding. So we split the docs into chunks, and then we embed. And then when we embed, we combine the docs, the relevant docs, and the prompt and the question. We send to LLM, but that's a separate section. This is just the embedding of the docs. And so we can even just demo a query here. Let's see, how do I create a database? So demo query, what this script will do is just show you how a vector DBA chain, DBQA chain, which is basically just going into the vector base, getting similar documents, combining a question, and get a response. It's a very simplified version of what we just looked at. And so it's just good to test this out. So I'm just going to run. You can create a script for this. I know this is tedious, but I just want to show you. So now we want to ask this question: how do I create a Notion database? Save that. Let's press enter. Oops. I think I did it wrong. Oh yeah, cool. So it's actually scripts demo. Should see a response in a second. Come on, come on, come on. Just close this down. There we go. So this is the response. You can create a Notion database by duplicating a free template, blah, 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 blah. You can also add. So I just wanted to show you, you can run this script yourself, but it's just showing you in a nutshell that all is good, all is working. And now it's just a matter of putting the pieces together. So with that in mind, this, again, the GitHub repo is going to be available and the image as well. So don't worry, you can always come back and get this. But what are we trying to get to? This is the end goal of this tutorial. So this is pretty much what we're working towards. So if I just jump in here. So again, this is a website I built around all the guides from this website, from Thomas Frank's website. And so here is his face. Hi Tom, what would you like to learn about Notion? So again, I ask the same question. How do I create a Notion database? Press enter, and we should see a response. Once you've chosen, you can duplicate. Cool. Now this is the moment of truth. Is the link gonna work? Is it gonna work? Ooh, no it didn't. Let's see this one. Ah, that one worked. Awesome. So that's good. At least we got one to work. But that's the general gist. So if I say something like, how do I automate my Notion? How do I automate repetitive tasks with Notion? Let's see what happens. What are you going to say now, Tom? What you going to say? Interesting. Notion automation YouTube data. Cool. Let's see. Now let me try and ask an irrelevant question. So let's say, what is love? I wonder what it's going to say back. Exactly. And so what's pretty cool is now I can say, if the user doesn't understand a response, I could say, what do you mean by let's see, it says automation builder by an automation builder. Let's see what's going to happen. Woo! That's awesome, man. That is cool. And this is the massive guide that he wrote as well. That is super cool. Yeah, this worked better than I thought. So that's just a demo real quick. Now let's jump into Supabase, because I think that's the only thing I haven't explained in previous tutorials. So first of all, what happened when the embedding was done In previous tutorials we did on Pinecone. Now we're using something called PG Vector, right? It's an extension on Supabase. And let me just go through the setup real quick. So you take this schema here. This enables the extension, the vector. This is your table. This is a function, a remote procedure call function that runs from your server. And what it does is it does the comparison check, the aspect of the diagram where we compare the queries vector to the vectors in the vector base to find the ones that are similar. So this sign here is a cosine similarity sign, and then index for speeding things up. So you can copy all of that, and then you hop back into Supabase, go on the SQL editor. Now I'm assuming you've already set up your database. It's not too hard to do that. And then in here you paste it in and you run. Once you run, go back to table editor, you'll see documents. And when you click on documents, you will see it will be empty, right? This is the setup in the beginning. You can also go up here and do what's known as row level security. What that does effectively is protects your database from people doing things like inserting things or updating things without your permission. So here I set one that enables read access for all users. That's the only thing they're allowed to do. So they cannot insert, they cannot update. If we jump back into database, you can see, let's go to functions. You can see the match document function. And then we can see the extensions and the vector extension. This is the PG vector that effectively does the storage of embeddings, and also does the similarity checks. So that's pretty cool. And then down here you can go get your API keys, your URL, and your non-URL. I'm not going to click that because you're going to see what mine looks like. But I think you get the gist. In general, this is what the embeddings will look like, if you've wondered. So here we have the content, right? Because we split the embeddings, remember, into chunks. So this is a chunk. This is metadata that I collected for each chunk. So I have a reference to where that data came from. And then we have the vectors themselves. This is what is compared to. And there's, I think, 1,536 vectors for OpenAI. And that's it basically in a nutshell. So you can see there's tons of pages of his guides. And I think that's basically the Supabase setup. I'm going to put a link to this guide by Greg, very useful. It just gives an overview of PG Vector and how it works. Explains embeddings better than I can. You can see it's just similarities of numbers. And it just gives an overview of Supabase and how Supabase works. So I think if you're not familiar with Supabase, definitely check this article out and have a feel for it. Cool. So in a nutshell, we basically have taken, if I just hop back in a second here. So in a nutshell, alright, hold on a sec. Let me show you the chat history real quick so that makes sense to you. So this is the index. You can see we have a message state. And so the message state consists of an array of messages, pending, which is pending messages to come, and history. And so if you see, we're continuously building a stack of messages and history, which we're also using use memo to cache it. And if you see, when we do make the query to the server, we pass the question and the history, then the server catches that, sanitizes that, and effectively uses the question and the history to make a call to the LLM or the OpenAI, right? So I hope that makes sense why we're kind of capturing these two, because otherwise there'll be no interaction back and forth between the user and the chatbot. So that was the chat and history section, the chat and question section, then the LLM standalone question also inside the chain.call that you just saw. And this is the draw out, where Supabase will pull out the relevant docs from the vector base using PG vector, pass the LLM, we get a response, and that's it. So now we have a simple chatbot for your website. Very simple. So let me just ask Tom one more question. And the question will be, let's just hop in the website and see what we can ask him. Okay. Let's say, what are some useful formulas in Notion? Let's see what happens. Nice. How do I use the, let's go to, how do I create page in Notion? Nice, nice. This is not bad. Hey Tom, if you're watching this, hit me up. But anyway, yeah, this was fun to make, and I hope you found it useful, and you got a good overview in terms of just making a chatbot for a website. Obviously, on a bigger scale, you're gonna have to crawl the website, get all the URLs, and do some queuing and all of that. But this is a very, very basic example using LangChain on how to create a chatbot for your website. If you have any questions or feedback or ideas for future videos, just hit me up. Cheers.